Hi everybody, thanks for joining me today. My name is Archie Blanchard and I'm a member of the Ceph expert team at 42On. Today I'd like to talk to you about the Ceph Object Store tool. We'll talk about what exactly the Object Store tool is, what it's capable of, when exactly it should be used, and how it can be used. So first and foremost, what exactly is the Ceph Object Store tool? Well, it's a low-level offline utility that is command line based that is used for directly interacting with the on-disk data of an OSD. It requires no cluster connectivity, meaning it doesn't require any communication with the cluster, a running monitor, or an OSD service, for example. It completely bypasses the cluster and interacts directly with the data on an underlying disk. Is designed for use with both BlueStore or FileStore, in other words, legacy OSD architecture, and it allows for the access to placement group metadata, object contents, and disk structures that would normally be obstructed by the OSD daemon. Object Store tool is not intended for routine cluster operations given the low-level nature of the utility. Due to running outside of the cluster, it's strictly used for recovery, inspection, and debugging, and again is not intended for daily administration of a Ceph cluster. So what exactly is the Ceph Object Store tool capable of? Well, it offers a number of different operations that are used for examining and manipulating the raw contents of a Ceph OSD. These operations occur entirely outside of the cluster. Some of those aspects, some of those operations would be listing placement groups and objects that are within an object store, dumping the metadata of an entire placement group or object. This can include key headers, attributes, timestamps, etc. You can export a placement group from an OSD, allowing for backup, and then you can even inspect that placement group from the archive which you exported through. Then you can even import that archive of PG to another OSD for data recovery scenarios, or in the case that you need to relocate placement groups during a disaster recovery scenario. You can also leverage fuse mounts. It's capable of presenting the contents of an object store as a read-only, browsable file system, which allows for navigation of the structure and placement groups and objects without having to modify any of that data, meaning it's completely safe for you to navigate through these files, through these directory structures to examine what is present. So when exactly should the Ceph Object Store tool be used? Well, it really should only be used in specific scenarios in which accessing the on-disk data of an underlying OSD is necessary. Most importantly, before using the tool, the target OSD needs to be stopped. This tool, as mentioned, bypasses the cluster entirely and directly interacts with the disks. Using this tool while an OSD is running can cause corruption to the on-disk data if it's being misused. But then what is this tool best suited for? Well, it's best suited for recovering data from a failed or decommissioned OSD. It's great for manually migrating a placement group from one OSD to another. You can use it for investigation of object data and attributes, and you can even use it for validation of object presence in the case that possible data loss or corruption has occurred. In the case of healthy clusters, relying on more standard tools is advised, such as ceph-pg query, Rados commands, and ceph-OSD map. These more standardized tools are cluster aware and enforce consistency through coordination with the mons and the OSDs. They're safe for everyday operations and maintenance. So let's take a deeper look. First and foremost, it's already been said, but important to note that before exercising any of these commands, the target OSDs need to be stopped. Here's an example of how to stop an OSD. Then I navigate to the OSD directory. This is preference. It's not a necessary step, but it allows you to do a // when you're specifying the data path for the Ceph Object Store tool. Again, not 100% necessary, but it does make it a little easier in some cases. Then we can list the placement groups within an OSD. So in this case, after navigating to OSD 0, we can list those placement groups. And we just kind of grabbed a random placement group that I'll be exporting to a tar archive, and then verifying that the tar archive exists. and then we'll stop the target OSD. In this case, the OSD is on the same host. It doesn't have to be on the same host. You could just as easily export and import this PG to a new host, a new OSD on a whole different host. So in this case, we're going to be stopping OSD2, and then we can import that placement group to the target OSD. And then we can verify that that placement group has moved to the intended OSD by using ceph-PG-ls, and then we can grep for the placement group ID. We can also fuse mount the OSD. So in this case, we're fuse mounting OSD 0 as it's still stopped. The previous OSD, OSD2, is now started up again, and we were able to verify that it does have the placement group which we imported previously. Fuse mounting the OSD is great. It allows for you to have a read-only browsable file system structure, a data hierarchy that you can peruse. And you can do this by just doing a --op, so operation. You specify fuse, and then --mount point, and you specify where you want that fuse mount to occur. Personally, I use screen sessions in order to just limit the number of terminal windows I have open, but that is not a necessary step. You can just as easily use multiple terminal windows if you so please. Then once it's mounted, we can actually browse to the mount point, and we're able to see each placement group present on the OSD. Within each OSD directory, each PG directory, we can actually see an all folder as well. And this folder actually contains encrypted objects stored within the placement group. These objects can contain metadata or data fragments, and they can be interacted with using standard tools such as cat, ls, stat, and etc. So that wraps up this video for the first look at ceph-object-store-tool. In the next video, what we'll do is we'll move from looking at documentation to actually looking at a demonstration on a live cluster. We'll bring down an OSD, we'll export a placement group, we'll import that placement group, and we'll inspect that placement group as well. We'll talk to the uses of ceph-object-store-tool and of course how it can help you in a disaster scenario. And so I hope everybody enjoyed the video thus far and was able to gain some information or some knowledge from it. In any case, please join us for the next one where we do our demonstration. This is Archie Blanchard signing off.